It's Thursday, August 29th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, we learn more about how to recycle smart with Barnstable County Waste Reduction Coordinator, Carrie Parcell, news about the Cape Town Plaza redevelopment. Now for a look at legislative notes. The Town of Barnstable will release its draft consolidated annual performance evaluation report today for the completed 2018 program year for the Community Development Block Grant Program. The report will be posted on the Town of Barnstable's website, and a public meeting will be held September 4th at 2 p.m. at Town Hall to review the draft report. The town was awarded $287,000 in Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development funds to address goals and objectives in the town's consolidated plan for 2015 through 2019, and the year-end report will detail accomplishments through the program. Public comments will be accepted through September 16th. Boatloads of plastic was diverted of the environment through the Recycle Boat Shrink Wrap program, and more recycling news with Barnstable County Waste Reduction Coordinator, Carrie Parcell. We're talking recycling today with Carrie Parcell, the Cooperative Extension Waste Reduction Manager, Coordinator,
Manager, it all works.
All sorts of different titles there, but really what you do is you try to make sure that Cape Cod is recycling smart.
Yes, we want to recycle smart, we want to recycle clean, and we want quality recycling markets.
Right. So you had a pilot program this year that seemed to garner a lot of interest, and from my understanding, actually saved a lot of plastic out of the oceans and everywhere else. Tell us a little bit about how the boat shrink wrap program went.
Yeah, so we wrapped up on June 30th. It was about a 9-week program. It was accessible to all Cape towns and communities, as well as harbor masters, boat yards, marinas, etc. And so in that 9 weeks, we recycled about 3.6 tons of boat shrink wrap. And if you remember, boat shrink wrap, when you take it off of the average boat, it weighs about 15 pounds. We talked about that big burrito wrapped in a bow, no strings, no wires, stuff like that. And so that's the equivalent of about 450 plus boats. Bourne actually collected the most, maybe just an accessible area with the Upper Cape, and then we had Dennis and Eastham who also participated. Not to forget that Sea Grant Woods Hole paid for this,
Right.
So services are not free, but we allowed it to be free for our residents and again boat owners that originate on Cape Cod. And then we had AmeriCorps volunteers, and of course the Extension Department, aka myself, helped, and we all put our efforts together, and it was a great 9 weeks. Very
Right.
cool.
And talk a little bit about that plastic. It's a little different than what we normally consider, our old milk bottles or whatever we throw
Right.
away in our plastics. That plastic can break down and get everywhere, can it?
Yeah, so when you're talking about plastics in general, plastics don't really ever sort of biodegrade or disintegrate.
Right.
They just become like smaller and smaller and smaller nanoplastics. And they get into our drinking water, they get into the, our food supplies because they go into the animals that absorb them, and then we eat those animals, and they even fly out through the air, which is quite interesting. But boat shrink wrap is a number 6 plastic for the most part, because you have to use, there's all these chemicals in there that when you heat it up, it sort of expands, and then as it cools, it shrinks, and that's what makes it a pretty decent weather retardant as far as boats go. It protects it. If you do it correctly when you're cutting it per season, you can actually reuse that up to 3 years, because the compounds do break down as you reheat and shrink and reheat and shrink. But you can use it up to about 3 seasons if you want to. Tarps and covered sheds and stuff work just as well. But we all know the weather here on the Cape, and if you're storing your boats here, you want to protect that investment. So it's a highly chemicalized, thick, crazy plastic that can be hard to recycle if there's no market for it. Luckily, we found a market and we found a vendor, and so it all sort of came together. This wasn't our first year, but it was the first year with an expansion outside of a location in Woods Hole at the oceanographic facility, and so it made it more accessible and a little bit more widely known that this was available to the residents and boat owners of Cape. So it was awesome.
Fantastic. And there's always still talk. We're just going to talk smart recycling. Contaminated loads are still out there, aren't they?
They are. The Cape is really pretty good. I mean, residents are pretty cognizant and aware. There are challenges to recycling, just kind of like anything, and as everybody knows, we're all talking about it, is things really getting recycled? Do things go into our landfills? Are they going to our waste to energy facilities? And the short answer is yes, it can, but not purposefully. It's mostly because we're not qualityizing our loads. We're sort of, quantity, with in doubt, put it in the bin, someone else will sort it out, right? And that's what we've been doing for 30 years. And it's, we want it to be convenient, we want it to be easy, but it needs to be right, it needs to be smart. And the way that the markets are is if you think of your toter or a bin that you put all your recycling in, if you put too much contaminants in it, it really becomes a load of trash with recycling in it, not recycling with trash in it. So we kind of have to visualize that. Right. And when you're thinking about the recycling systems for our state, they go through conveyor belts and optics and blowers and magnets, and human hands are touching this. And so if we're not putting the right things in there, you're really, making it a worker safety issue, you're making it a production issue, and you're making it, a processing, sorting, baling issue, because if you have, coat hangers or Christmas lights or baby dolls or diapers or food waste, plastic bags are the #1 contaminant, and they tangle up in that, that system for separation, and that's really our big problem. So it's really sort of knowing what's recyclable versus, somebody else will take care of it for us. We really need to take accountability for our own ability to put the right things in that bin.
Right. And there is a website that helps with that. It has a Recyclepedia, RecycleSmart.
RecycleSmartMA.org.
Right.
And it does, right on the homepage, there's a little widget called the Recyclepedia, and you can type in, various items. I believe there's a list more of 400 strong. And you can type in car bumper, and it'll probably tell you to put it in the scrap metal at your transfer station or having to take it to a scrap metal pile. Right. If it says Christmas lights, during the season, most of our transfer stations put out barrels specific to Christmas lights so they can take it to a metal sorter. So there's all different things. I mean, black plastics don't get read by our optic readers, and so black plastics, like the Chinese bottoms of the to-go containers, are not recyclable because they're not being read, so they're just going into the resin anyway. And so it begs a larger question about, extended producer responsibility and our manufacturers and processors of these particular plastics for our to-go containers, etc. But, for now, the Cape is doing a really nice job.
Right. And one of the last things we would kind of want to touch on is that we now have the ability to recycle our own glass here on Cape Cod. This is super exciting, really cool technology. It's going to save towns who bring loads to this recycler. Tell us what it is.
Yeah, so we call it processed glass aggregate, and really what it is, it's recyclable glass. So your mayonnaise jars, your jelly jars, your jam jars, put the lid back on, make sure they're not, they don't have to be super clean, don't waste a ton of water cleaning it out, but nice and clean. Your deposit bottles, your wine bottles, things like that. And you don't want tempered glass like windshields, you don't want mirrors in there, photo frame glass, that sort of stuff that's not recyclable. But your recyclable glass in general, you can clean it, cap it, and then take it to your transfer station. And there's 5 towns that source separate their glass from the rest of the commingled, which would be your plastics and tin and aluminum. And what they do is they take it to the town of Dennis, which received a grant through DEP, and they have a big lot where they tip the glass, and it's away from the public because we need to be safe. Right. And at 600 tons, which currently we're at 540, we have a third-party vendor that comes in, and they actually crush it down to a 3/8 minus, and it's used for roadway, building, construction, and drainage projects. So if you buy a glass container on the Cape, and then you consume, eat whatever was within it, you clean it up, and you take it to one of those 5 transfer stations, it's actually going to be reused here on those projects. And so it's quite fascinating, and it's a really great regional program, and that's what we're working on. With boat shrink wrap, it's regional. With glass, it's regional. We have mattress recycling, that's regional. We have latex paint, that's regional. And so these are the big things that we're working on as a group, as a community, as Cape, that we can work on together and really sort of give access to folks for that proper recycling and to find those streams and uses for it.
This is fantastic. The Barnstable is participating in this program with the glass.
They are.
So it's really important, again, to look at what you're putting in your recycling. So no ceramic dishes, no porcelain.
Nope.
It's really literally just...
no drinking glasses. You don't want to put any vases or anything like that in there. Again, it's recyclable glass. So pickle jars, mayonnaise jars, olive jars, those types of things, basically food and beverage. Think of it as food and beverage. And again, if in doubt, you can go to recyclesmartma.org, type it in, and it'll tell you what to do with it. So it's easy peasy. We're trying our best to just make it right there, easy peasy for you.
Right, but we're going to actually probably reduce, reuse, recycle, right?
Yes, I mean, we went from 3 R's, we actually have 9 now. We have 9 R's, but I'm not going to bore you with them nor overwhelm anybody with them. But really, it's kind of like a refuse, reduce, we want to, I have a mason jar at home that somebody gave me some flowers in, and I cleaned it out very thoroughly, and I use it as a drinking jar now. So, and sometimes it's a vase, sometimes I drink out of it. I'm not telling you to do that. However, it's something that I option out with that particular, mason jar instead of, tossing it. But I do. I kind of go back and forth between, if I have flowers in my house, it's my vase, and if I don't, it's my drinking glass.
There you go. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Carrie.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
What are PFAS and PFOA chemicals classified as emerging contaminants of concern? Hans Kaiser, Hyannis Water Supply Supervisor, helps us understand what they are and where they might be found.
Emerging contaminants are contaminants that we don't have any regulation for and that are new. We haven't really tested before for them, and sometimes the testing needs to happen at such a low level that the laboratory equipment that we used to have or we had access to wasn't able to do that, and now the equipment is much better, so now those contaminants starting to show up, and we have to figure out what that means, if they're okay, if they're harmful, at what levels are they okay, at what levels are they harmful, and if they are, how do you take them out?
There's two things. One, those with those snouts on it, where the tape is off, those are more for sampling. But you take samples to make sure you don't get contaminated water, okay? Those have to do with the analyzers. What happens is the chlorine, the pH, which is the corrosion issue, they get sampled constantly, 24/7. And how that works is we run water by them and then dump a little water that gets kind of wasted. So we sample constantly, every minute or so. And then that gets translated into an electronic pulse, and that goes into the system that we just saw, that screen, and then it goes to the main headquarters.
PFAS is basically a group of chemicals, there's like a couple of hundred of them, with all different, very long, difficult chemical names. But basically they deal with issues they are in firefighting foams, they're on Gore-Tex, they're basically dealing with making materials waterproof, so they repel water, and these chemicals are one of the many emerging contaminants, and we're finding out now that these chemicals can be harmful. At what levels and for who is being right now researched. At this moment, we're looking at 6 PFASs, and at this moment, there's an ORSG out, and it's like a health standard for Massachusetts that is 70 parts per trillion, and they're talking about going down to 20, but it hasn't happened yet. So So what we're trying to do here in Hyannis is to deal with this issue and to position ourselves with pumping out of certain wells and testing so that we can be under 20 as much as we can. Complicating the issue is because we're in a pretty urban environment and our wells are, that we do have wells that are contaminated above that level, especially on Mary Dunn. But there's 3 wells there that were impacted by the Fire Training Academy, and the filtration systems were installed in those wells with activated carbon in them. And after we run the water through those, we get a non-detect, so that water is good after we treat it.
After almost a decade into their management of Cape Town Plaza on Route 132, WS Development, Barnstable Municipal Airport, and the town of Barnstable have signed a new 49-year lease agreement to redevelop the shopping center.
I recall President Reagan once said, "Great things can happen when nobody cares who gets the credit," or something along those lines. And this was a very, very significant team effort throughout the town. And just to run down town leadership, town of Barnstable leadership, airport staff, WS Development, making this happen. Got approval and signing of the agreement between the airport and WS Development for a 49-year lease for the 27-acre parcel commonly known as Cape Town Plaza, but soon to be known as WS Landing at Hyannis. It's a great, momentous event.
I just have such a vivid memory of speaking with 3 different airport managers, speaking with 25 different airport individuals, speaking with 3 different managers in our town, all about this issue, and the only one constant was WS. So for that, I'm very grateful. What we had is we had a buyer come into town, take over the lease at a time when it was positioning itself to do good and to make the next run at the property. That's a commitment in itself. But what we saw during that time was somebody having to understand how the municipality works and work with us and bear with us through the process. We changed 3 managers. We had 3 airport managers. We had several people on the committee, but it was always a discussion and there was always a person, and it was always identified as WS. So the consistency deserves due recognition by WS.
This has been under discussion, I think, the entire time I've been here in one form or another. What was exciting about what occurred here, besides the effort of leadership, our council and our commission, thank you both, and the many managers who have been involved with these efforts, we kind of got focused right in on where we wanted to go. We came together, we had strong leadership, we had a clear vision of what the objective was, and with talented people like formerly Bud and now Katie and Matt and Andy and David and Joanna and Mark and others from our legal staff, Ruth and Charlie, we were able to deliver this product. And as Jim has said, WS was always at the table as a partner, strong in their commitment to the town of Barnstable, and that's greatly appreciated. And we look forward to working with you as we move forward on this and possibly other opportunities. So thank you all for your leadership, and thanks staff, great job.
The property is commonly known as Cape Town Plaza. The airport owns, it's about 27 acres that the airport actually owns and manages the acreage. It belongs to the airport, but we're also an entity of the town of Barnstable, so we're an enterprise fund in the town of Barnstable. So when we started to look at the property and we knew that the lease was coming up, it was expiring, we said we should really go out for an RFP for the property and see what type of development could actually occur on that parcel. So we did that back in October 2017. We started writing a draft RFP, which is a request for proposal, to entice any developers that would like to further develop that property, enhance the property. Basically, that process took from October until April of 2018. By April of 2018, we had a bid out on the street. WS Development was one of the bidders. That we had two bidders. WS Development was the bidder that came in with the proposal that met all the needs of the RFP. And by December of 2018, we had chosen WS Development to be the future developer of what's now known as Cape Town Plaza, but soon to be known as the Landing at Hyannis.
Well, we are deep believers in the Cape and in Barnstable in particular. We've owned this asset for 10 years. We understand the importance of it to the town. It's certainly very important to us. We have a legacy of working with communities all across New England in either building from the ground up or reinvesting in assets that we've acquired, and we just think it's the heart of the Cape. It's a very important piece of real estate. It's sorely in need of reinvestment, and we just look forward greatly to working with the town and pouring both capital and sweat into making it great.
I think really the next steps are squarely with WS Development and their team as they start to envision what they want to do on that property. As the landlord of the property, really through the agreements that we made with WS, and one of the largest reasons that we chose WS is for their ability to create a sense of space wherever they go, to create something that's really true and unique to the environment that they're in, and to cater to the community that they're serving. And that was one of the biggest aspects of the proposal that we looked at, that we said, WS Development is definitely the one to do that. So really now the onus is on WS to start working with the town and with other entities that they'll need to work with locally and statewide to be able to develop that property.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We've begun a planning process. Part of the RFP was to put forward a plan. We will refine that. We'll be working with the community, with both the Airport Commission and especially with local boards to seek approvals. We have existing tenants in the center who still have rights to be there, and so it will take a little longer, unfortunately, than we would like. The difference being, if we had a piece of raw land, we could get going right away. But we will be in a planning and entitlements process, speaking with lots of prospective tenants to try to bring the best tenants we can to the site over the course of the next months and actually a few years.
Where the airport, from the airport itself, the whole experience of working with WS Development, working with the town initially as a town entity, and getting all of the documentation that we need to proceed forward with putting this out to bid, and then getting our proposals back from WS Development and other entities that were interested, and just really going through the evaluations from top to bottom. And what it actually developed in was a very unique and quite nice partnership with WS Development, and the airport itself is really looking forward to that partnership. And we're part of the fabric of the community, and not only from an aviation transportation standpoint, we're the community. We're providing a service to the community, and WS knows that. They do that wherever they are, and it was just the right fit, and it made sense.
Yeah, I would echo. Thank you, Katie. I would echo what Katie said. We often come into a community already with ownership of a piece of land, and we begin working with that community. This has been almost backwards. We've spent a decade working with a community to get to know people, to build relationships, and the partnership between my company and with the airport and also with the town has been really remarkable. People have worked exceedingly hard to get to this point in time. The RFP process, the lease negotiation process, the planning process, the town and the Airport Commission have been incredibly thoughtful about our proposal. We've gotten really good feedback from them. So it's it's been a journey that will continue. It's nice to be traveling with partners you like doing business with. It's really been a pleasure.
Yes, I've been on the commission now for over 20 years, and as many people said earlier today, the town council president, Jim Crocker, et cetera, this has been a subject of discussion and consternation now for decades. And I guess I've been here long enough to see a lot of it. The team effort was just superb. And our commission, if this were a private corporation, we'd be the board of directors. Katie would be the CEO and on down. But the commission, airport management, town management, and the other people that I mentioned earlier, it truly was a magnificent team effort, and the result is today, the 30th of July, 2019. We're happy. This is a great day for our airport and the town of Barnstable as a whole. Everybody should be thrilled to no end.
Up next, things to do, places to go, and people to meet. It's an evening for geeks and goblins at Katuitt Library, Friday, August 30th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. because they will be playing Magic the Gathering, the popular trading card game by Wizards of the Coast. Never played before or are a little rusty? No worries. They'll have a little introduction crash course and also provide pre-made decks for you to practice with. Cards are also available for players to come and make a deck for themselves if they need one. If you're a seasoned player, bring your cards and join the fun. All are welcome. Pizza and drinks will also be provided to participants. This program is free, but please register at katuittlibrary.org/events. Activities or contact the library. Comments, suggestions, accolades, connect with us on Facebook, email us, or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works for you. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.